Okay.
Did you prepare an opening thing, Eric?
No.
I feel like we haven't done this in a while.
Yeah, this was going to be kind of like one of those, like, we'll see what we run into and everything. So I know all of our minds have probably been all kinds of places for 2 weeks, so we'll kind of be exciting to see where we all mash up together. So I guess that being said, yeah, so what's today? The
19th.
The 19th, so December 19th, here we are. Has it been 2 weeks, I think, maybe?
It feels like it's been a month to me, but
It might have been longer.
Yeah, maybe longer.
I don't know.
It feels like a long time to me. That's why when you said I got a haircut, I was just like, I feel like I got a haircut like a long, long time ago. But anyways, so yeah, for that reason alone, here we are together again to discuss whatever comes to our minds ultimately. I've actually quit a couple things. So like I was playing Pokemon Go for a good long while, at 2.5 years. I officially deleted the app and like told Nicole, I was like, don't talk to me about it. Like I deleted it. I'm done.
Oh shit.
And I've also stopped watching YouTube. The main reason was because a lot of my algorithm was based around Pokemon Go videos. I didn't want to like be like, badgered with that and like potentially get tempted. But also too, for the political reason, I kind of wanted to like purge myself of all the talking heads and everything and just kind of really get back to myself and like what I'm thinking and what I believe ultimately. So I'm kind of doing that purging right now in a lot of ways. So that's kind of what I've been going through.
How are you getting are you just getting are you still watching YouTube, just not through the app?
No, I haven't watched. Well, I've watched like a YouTube, like if you send me like a trailer or something in the text, I'll watch the trailer, But that's all. That's it. So as far as like news that's popped up, all I've seen news wise is just what's popped up like on my Apple News daily alert, and then I've been watching C-SPAN again. So I probably missed some headlines that you guys can certainly fill me in. I can give you my my true opinion because I haven't had anyone talk to me about it yet. So
that's I feel like there is because Bryant made a comment about Trump. I assume we're going to talk about this, the termination of the Constitution and how to interpret that. But there's a lot of stuff where I feel like you almost have to watch a clip to know to hear somebody say it. There's a lot of that stuff, especially with like the protesters and all that. I mean, there's a bunch. Like I definitely want to talk about the president of Harvard and the MIT and all that stuff. That's wild. But I have
no clue. I haven't really been paying attention to it. So
yeah, okay, we could talk about it. What do you want to start with that?
If you want to,
because I mean that was the thing, real fast. Is that I agree with you because I was I just watched that Don't Worry, Darling movie. With Harry Styles. Do you know that movie, Bryant? It was.
I do not know it.
Olivia Wilde, Harry Styles, and I forget the blonde's name. She was in Midsummer. She was also in Oppenheimer recently. But it was directed by Olivia Wilde, and I guess Olivia Wilde made a comment a while back. I think it came out like 2 years ago, maybe now or something. But
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, she had mentioned that the Chris Prime, he's also in it. That character was loosely based off of Jordan Peterson, basically.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know what you're talking about now. Yes. Okay, I know what movie because I remember that. I remember that being said.
Right. And so then there's a Piers Morgan interview with Jordan Peterson where he confronts him about that, and like there's a moment like where he kind of cries about it and everything. But whenever I was reading that, I was like, oh yeah, like there is like so many of these moments now where like news is happening like via video and all that. So people are writing about these little moments like that. So I'll have to get back into YouTube eventually. I just want to kind of make sure that it goes into like more of a cleansing thing where it's just like, I want to do more of like from the horse's mouth kind of thing. You know what I mean? So
that's fair enough. I do. Maybe there's an opportunity. I have been curious what your issue with him is, Bryant, because I don't know what he says that's controversial. I've been meaning to ask you.
I guess it's the way he presents it. I don't think he's an intelligent man. I think he uses big words and tricks people. I don't think he has any depth to what he says.
Is there anything he said that you...
There's nothing I can remember. I've seen stuff, and nothing. Okay. I don't know. I can't say in particular because when I find someone I like, I realize I've watched it and like it, I just purge them from my mind. So I just know that I didn't like them. But I know I've watched some of his stuff and just the way he comes off, the way he does stuff, like him crying in some of these interviews about things. It's just like, fuck off, you grifter. It just that's the vibe he gives me. So he just he doesn't he uses big words to make people think he's smart, and I just think.
That's fair enough. That's just your opinion. That's fair enough. Like, because he has said some stuff that gets taken wildly out of context, and I want, like, you know, the thing about women wearing makeup at work or whatever. It's like, that's not what he said. But I mean, that's fair enough. The thing about him that I really like is that I found out about him I was going through a really bad breakup, and I was feeling really aimless. And one of the things, he's probably part of the reason I'm back to school, frankly. His whole message of like, hey, you know, things that you do have a consequence. And it's very, like, I've talked to my dad about Jordan Peterson, and my dad doesn't watch him because he's like, all this is stuff that I know. He's like, I agree with everything he's saying, but this is all stuff that I just know. But I think some of, like, just the basic wisdom that we've kind of lost as a culture of, you know, everything you say matters. And there's consequences to everything you do. And just because there's a video I watched recently that I thought about posting in the group because it's like a minute long, but it encapsulates what I think is great about him, where he says, you know, you can be, the example he uses, you can have cancer. You find out you're going to die and you're broke or whatever. You're just in hell. And you have two options. Like, you can just be miserable and turn it into hell and make it worse. Or you can aim up and have integrity in the face of whatever adversity you're facing. And that message is something that I really appreciate because it's helped me personally in some rough spots. And just saying, hey, don't aim down, aim up whenever you're in a rough spot. And that's overall what I like about him. There's some stuff, I find a lot of the crying endearing, honestly, because a lot of it is due to, he's talking about young men that are hurting. Mm-hmm. And people don't really give a shit about young men right now. But I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, everybody's got their own opinions. But that's the thing about him that I like. I feel like he cares about a certain group of people that, you know, that other people don't give a shit about. But
we all have things that just resonate with us, though. So I can certainly understand that maybe there's certain things that just don't jive with you or whatever. Bryant's like other things I'm sure I can say about other people as well, but just one of those things.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, exactly. That's why the world is crazy as it is, because we can look at the same thing and all get a completely different interpretation from a message. Or
always mesh either. Sometimes it's just
exactly.
A personality thing, like people in real life. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What were we going to say, though, a second ago, David, before I did the whole other thing?
I mean, you can go ahead. Because Bryant brought up the constitutional thing that Trump said. I was curious what you thought about it, Eric, because you're the Trump supporter of the three of us. I definitely want to talk about that. The president of Harvard was in front of Congress, and I have an interesting opinion on this. I watched it, and basically they were asking her about the quote unquote calls of genocide against Jews that's been going on campus. And the congresswoman, I forget her name, was asking, like, will you admit that calling for the genocide of Jews goes against the policy of Harvard? And she did this with Harvard and MIT and a couple other schools. And the schools just doubled down. And when I first saw that, I'm a free speech absolutist, so I was trying to be on the side of Harvard, and just be like, okay, well, what were they actually saying? And I still kind of feel that way. Like, what were they actually saying? And how many people actually... have y'all heard the story of the cannibal cop back in, like, early 2000s? Do you remember this guy?
No, what the fuck?
Okay, so this ties into this. I was thinking about this today.
Great band name.
Yeah, it's a great band name. So it was this guy in New York City. HBO did a documentary about it, and I watched it maybe 10 years ago or something. And basically this guy had what's called a Thor fetish, where he gets off on cannibalism. So he would go into these chat rooms, and he would just role play with people. Mm-hmm. And with his situation, it got kind of serious. And it got to the point, I wish I remembered it better. I've told this story to a lot of people. But it got to the point where it was like, is this guy actually planning something? And somewhere along the line, he's a New York City cop. Somewhere along the line, this got out to, I don't remember if it was another cop or a news reporter or something. He was put on trial for it. And I don't want to speak. I don't remember exactly what, like if he had like duct tape in the back of his car or something, but it ended up getting thrown out. And he was just, I don't think he was a cop again, but it was, the whole thing was, is like, this guy really planning this?
Mm-hmm.
Or based on the chat room messages that he had. And I remember finishing that documentary and going, I don't know what to think about that, because I think that you should be able to, if you're into that, as weird as it is to me, you should be able to do that with other people that are into that too. And I kind of felt similarly about this whole situation because, by and large, I'm on the side of Israel with this whole thing. But and you should have the right to say whatever you want as long as you're not actively calling for the violence of another person.
Mm-hmm.
But it was weird that this lady, who supposedly was a diversity hire, couldn't just say, yeah, we're against the genocide of anybody. But she couldn't say it. And it was a real bizarre situation. And I mean, I don't want to say that this echoes a certain amount of sentiment. I mean, I think it does. But I thought it was a real interesting, like, what's wrong with you that you can't just say, hey, yeah, we're against the genocide of anybody. But she couldn't say it.
What did she say?
That's exactly what she said. She said it depends on the context. And then the congresswoman was saying, is it against Harvard's policy to be against the genocide of Jews? And she wouldn't just say no. It was really weird. And on one hand, I'm kind of like, okay, well, there are points to where it's like, if you say river to the sea, that's what you're saying. But do the kids actively believe that? They probably don't know. If you ask them what river or what sea, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. They don't know what they're saying. But if you're saying that the sentiment is there. So I understand the nuance to it. But just say, no, we're against that. Yeah, you can't say that. She couldn't just say that,
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty disturbing.
That is interesting.
Was it in context of just like, I guess the quote unquote genocide of the Palestinian people, or it was just a blank question about just like, is it against?
They were accused of calling for the genocide of Jews. This was a couple different schools. Harvard, MIT, and a couple others. But the Harvard one, her name was President something Gay. She's a bald black woman who supposedly was found to have plagiarized a bunch of shit in her, tenure in the education system, but apparently was a diversity hire. And she just couldn't say, no, we're against this. And one of the reasons that this is interesting to me is I didn't know it has nothing to do with, I'm against the killing of innocent people, no matter who it is. But this whole situation has been bizarre to see the amount of anti-Semitism that seems to have just been bubbling below the surface. I didn't know that this amount of Jew hatred was this real in this country. I mean, I knew that it existed, but it just seems like people are popping up, and it's just like a, green light to just say shit. Mm-hmm. So to me, that was very bizarre. I don't want to use the word scary, but it's a little scary that shit's going on, to that degree. And I think a lot of these young people, they don't know what they're saying. They're impressionable kids, and it's cool to say some queers for Palestine. You have no idea what the fuck you're saying. You have no idea what that means and how ridiculous that is. But the president of Harvard can't just say, no, we're against genocide. That seems like such a obvious.
Right. I don't know, but maybe there's something she was told since, she was hired by other people and her higher ups gave her certain things that she couldn't say. And maybe, I don't know, that would be my thinking, or I don't know. Yeah. I don't know why she did it.
It's like, what the fuck? Why? It's just with all this going on, it's kind of just seeing people's opinions pop out like this. It's, I don't know. I just didn't know that. It's made me kind of think that there's a certain amount of anti-Semitism that's just baked into our culture that I just didn't know was there. Yeah. Just the amount of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's always been there. That's always been something that's, you could just. I felt like it was always there. I guess it's definitely risen to the surface lately, more recently. But I felt like there was always that stigma throughout everywhere I lived, or
I think everyone kind of hates everybody to a certain degree. Like if there's like an Irish thing going on, I mean, I could see like a whole bunch of like anti-Irish sentiment coming out or something like that. Mm-hmm. I think that's just truth of reality that groups hate other groups and everything.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of Gangs of New York. Remember
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, and the different things, and like how like they hate it. Like they'll bitch at you if you're Irish, or they bitch at you if you're Italian, or there's always there's always someone that hates someone.
Right.
But if you're a public official like that, or a public figure, I guess you're a figurehead of this supposed to be the most prestigious school in the world. I mean, and if it is her higher ups that are telling her that, I mean, that's kind of worse.
Well, it's a question of the angle, isn't it? I mean, I guess, are you positing that potentially that they actually are for the genocide, or that maybe she just had a bad moment and didn't quite say what she meant or something?
Well, it wasn't just her. It was a couple schools. So that's the one that I saw. I read about the other ones. But it was a couple different schools. And I think I told you this personally, Eric. I think the week that Bryant was off, Thomas Sowell has a quote about Jew hatred, about anti-Semitism. He said that Bill Maher said something about this too, but he said that the reason people hate Jews is because they are an incredibly successful minority, and I think there's some truth to that. But Bill Maher made the point. He goes, "There's a certain chunk of the population that is always going to be on the side of whoever's poorer and browner. And if you're richer and whiter, I mean, it's that black and white, and I definitely see that. And I agree that there's always, anti-Semitism is something, maybe I'm just naive. I didn't see a whole lot of it. I've heard, like, wherever. I've heard it up here. I've heard it in Texas. Like, on a rare occasion, it'll be just a white person I'm with and they'll use the N-word. I've heard that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that I've ever heard somebody use the word, like, hike. Maybe I have. I was drunk for a long time. Maybe I did. I don't know.
No, I never hear. I know that's not something I typically hear either. It's just, how it's always they're talked down upon, or, I'm actually, honestly, in the church, I felt like it was more of a thing, like you would hear these guys, there was always, they bash different things, but there was more bashing over, like the Jews, because, the Christians can bond over being Christians, but the Jews are, So I felt like there's just all this stigma in there with them. I mean, it wasn't very obvious, but there's definitely conversations you would overhear them, and they're definitely talked down upon and stuff. The butt up jokes all the time.
What denomination was the one you used to go to, if you remember? Just out of curiosity. What denomination was it?
I was let's see, was baptized Lutheran, then converted to Catholicism when I was a kid. Yeah, like so my parents, I was baptized Lutheran, and then later my dad was like, we're going to convert to Catholicism. It's like, if we're going to be Christians, we're going to be the original one. I'm like, oh, okay, I just follow you. Yeah. And then I guess in high school it was like a more non-denominational thing, and then it like turned in the church I was at turned into like a Pentecostal craziness, and it was like,
yeah, they're wild.
But through all of those, like there was always in any of the ones I went to, there was you know that I can remember, because I definitely remember the Lutheran shit because I was like a toddler. But there was always, they were always looked down upon, or was always below the way people spoke of it. So
my family is very much not my mom, I still had a story where my mom once said something that was like, what? But my family, even my extended family, I couldn't say they're racist at all. I mean, my dad has said some stuff when I was younger, but as far as like any of that goes, I've always been lucky to be around people that don't are actively against that too. Mm-hmm. So maybe it was just the people I was around, but it's definitely like an eyebrow raiser, right?
But I think some of it too is kind of like I don't know if you guys heard about the Matt Rife thing, the comedian on Netflix, as far as people getting frustrated with his opening joke about domestic violence and everything. There was something I heard about. I guess people.
There's a second part to that too.
What?
His apology.
What,
Did you hear about that?
No. Well,
this is the punchline to it. So the joke was something about he was at a restaurant and the waitress had a black eye, and then he made a joke. Well, she wouldn't have a black eye if she knew how to cook, something like that.
Yeah.
And then everybody got mad, so he posted an apology somewhere on Twitter or whatever, and he said, "Donate to this whatever charity," and you go there, and it's helmets for kids with mental illness. So he just doubled down on it. That's the funniest part to me. And then, but he knows what he's doing. He's trying to weed out those people, and I think he's doing it to get more fans, and it's working.
Well, that's kind of what my point is, though, is that I think a lot of things are reactions towards the taboos, ultimately. So in some ways, I kind of agree with the analysis that maybe comedy is getting like raunchier and more like doubling down on being.
Oh, some of it is, yeah.
Yeah, just because it's what's getting the looks ultimately. So I imagine, like, in my mind, like the N-word is like one of the major taboos. Like, you're not supposed to say it. So I feel like some people almost say it just because you're not supposed to, and they get excited about that. Just like when we were kids saying "fuck," it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So I just think that maybe like Jews didn't quite have that same class in the sense of just like, oh, like we're not supposed to talk about you, there's like a word we can't say about you, so it's kind of just like I guess some of us do hate you because you're Jews, but it isn't the same like taboo in my mind. So that might be why it wasn't as rampant ultimately. And so maybe it's just now it's kind of in that zeitgeist of tabooness again, in the sense of just, I mean, with Kanye, blowing up and just saying stuff, he seemed more like a kid, just like, I'm going to say some like really bad stuff I'm not supposed to.
But he's legitimately like bipolar. That's part of what that is. He's in a manic episode. Is that all that stuff?
Well, right, but the manic episode is him not. Would you say that he believes what he's saying, or are you just saying it because he's lost his mind? Yeah,
he believes it. When he's in that, he's bipolar. I mean, it's not to give him a pass at all. Honestly, I think that the way we looked at that was wrong. I think that it should have been looked at like, hey, man, this guy should not. This guy needs help. When it comes to that, I don't think that we should be looking at it. But yeah, he probably means it. He went on, what was it, Alex Jones, where his whole face was covered.
Yes,
weird.
Yeah, he went in like a whole outfit. So that was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
Yeah, that was fucking.
It seemed more like a skit to me personally, but I mean, maybe you guys are right, but
it could. Maybe you're right. I don't.
I mean, it's people paying attention to him.
Right.
That's true. That's true.
There's no bad press, right?
But
so that's just how it seemed to me.
The president of Harvard. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
That's just how it seemed to me, that maybe it's more about these taboos that people are just trying to overcome and gain the power from the anti-power or something like that. So as far as this Harvard thing you're talking about and the other schools, I just don't understand what the angle is. I mean, there's no shortage of people that are trying to play the politics game that are making missteps ultimately. So I can imagine maybe the head of a school is just like, oh well, what, like, who am I supposed to like right now? Who? You
need to watch the video because it is weird. I mean, it is like, you can't do that.
How long is the hearing? I remember. How long is that one?
It's probably less than a minute. You can just watch it real quick. I mean, there's
but it's from a hearing, right? They had a hearing at like a judicial hearing or something like that.
Yeah, I don't. It's several hours. I don't know how long, and they talked to several different ones. But it's just like, dude, you're a representative. You're the face of. No, it's stupid to do that too. It's like, I mean, if you're the face of a company, for instance, I mean, like Papa John. I mean, when you do things, you're gonna have, a negative effect. And Harvard already has an issue with. They've already had bad press because of the whole way that they were suppressing Asian students coming in because of, again, diversity hires. But dude, you're talking about like, just say no. We don't believe that you should actively, promote the genocide of anybody. That's all you have to say. But she just couldn't do it. And it's like, this isn't a comedy skit. This isn't two people at a bar talking. This is, you're the president of Harvard.
No, I see obviously what you're saying, but I could easily imagine though that if she did say, like, I guess what you're saying, that there'd be a bunch of people that would be up in arms about just like, oh well, I get what you're saying, but you're taking a side of Israel now. That's carpet bombing Gaza. Like it would get in the weeds fast. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm more inclined to think that. But I'll have to watch the hearing. And
you need to watch it. It's I'm sure that is part of it in her mind. But then say something more political. Like say something where you're more in the middle. I mean, she just doesn't say no. I mean, it's weird. I mean, it's borderline dangerous given the state of all this right now.
What was the hearing? Especially what was the hearing even about? Like, was it about genocide? Like,
no, it was about. I think it was about speech on campus.
Okay.
Claudine Gay is her name. There was some other weird stuff the last couple of weeks. Like, it was the mayor of Boston. Did you hear about this one?
Mm-mm. I've been kind of out of loop. So much has been going on.
The mayor of Boston got busted sending an email by accident. And the email was not supposed to go to anybody except the people of color in her staff. Or I don't know if it was just her staff or whatever, but it was supposed to be that they have a party where you're not allowed to go if you're white. And she accidentally sent it to the wrong person. The email went out to everybody, got picked up by the press. Frankly, and I feel weird even saying this, but I'm kind of getting tired of some of that shit too. Like that you can say, I mean, I get it to a point. Like, white people have had sort of they've been the top dog, so to speak, in this country. And I get like why there's a double standard there. I get why a comedian can talk about white people, but there is a point, it is getting to a point where it's like, dude, like this is getting borderline racist. I mean, there's a movie coming out where it's openly talking about how white people are unethical. I mean, it's like what, at a certain point, this is getting kind of creepy, I think. And I think we've all noticed that our whole lives. Like there's an episode of The Simpsons where they talk about it, but it's just it's being pushed so actively that it's starting to freak me out a little bit.
Sorry, I feel like you're saying these things and like I don't know, for some reason it's like kind of strange. Not like what you're saying, I guess.
It is strange.
It's just the strange times, I guess, thing that we always kind of come to ultimately, right? But yeah, I don't know.
It's very strange.
I mean, because like that was the Brett Weinstein thing or whatever, right? About the college campus where it was like there was a day where I guess people of color didn't have to go to school or something like that, but then they decided one day that everyone that wasn't of color had to leave the school and couldn't come or something like that, and that was like kind of drawing the line as far as like, well, I mean, you could not come.
Well,
but like you can't tell me to go.
There was a day that Evergreen had every year where it was, if you're a person of color, you don't have to go to school. And it was like they've been doing it for a long time, but then they decided to flip it around and say, you are not allowed to come to school if you're white. And that's what he had an issue with. He was like, you can't tell me I can't come to school and do my job. So they were looking for him with baseball bats and shit. This was about 5 years ago. This was a while back, but that's definitely creepy. And that's how he became famous. Well, after that, he went on Rogan, and then he's blown up everywhere. But basically, his issue with that is you can't tell me not to go to school or to work. In his case, And that is straight up racism. I mean, you can't really say that. I'm kind of getting tired of not being able to say that, because it is like, dude, I mean, what else do you call it? I had a girl that works for me who said, and I'm sure y'all have heard this, but she said, you can't be racist against white people. And I asked her, I said, I know why you're saying that. You're saying that because you heard somebody online say it. But what is the benefit of changing the word racist to mean that? Because that's not what racism means. You're changing the definition. And what positive are you getting from that definition? Like, there's nothing except negativity that can come from that. And you're dividing. And the whole point, like MLK's whole thing was judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. This is the opposite of that. We're literally just dividing ourselves and saying, I'm going to judge this person first because of the color of their skin, or in some cases their religion. And that's the antithesis of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for sure. It just, I guess, some people are just not going to go along with that ultimately. So I guess it's just like, how do we all get along ultimately? I'm certainly glad for this country of laws and constitution that we have to kind of like keep that stuff curbed. So I mean, until I guess it kind of starts to go for legislation and everything, I don't know. Like, there's going to be pockets of nonsense all over the place in different forms and fashions. So it's just like, I mean, I think part of it too is just, I mean, it's like some of it's the attention, I think, of it. Like, do you ever watch that Don Lemon interview with Morgan Freeman way back when?
Don Lemon.
Whenever they were talking about racism, and like Morgan Freeman was just like, if you keep talking about it, like, it keeps being a thing, and we never get over it ultimately. Yeah. And I definitely have that sentiment in the sense of like, we can't figure out our past because that's how we create the same mistakes for sure. But if we keep fixating on something, I mean, everything's going to be nails. It's going to be like what that Darren Aronofsky film, Pi. It's just, if you fixate on something, I mean, everyone's talking about it in the sense of you fixating on just like the white man and whatever is the problem, and beforehand the black man was the problem. It's just kind of getting over that and just not fixating on that, moving on to different things that are actually affecting us all. So that's why it's more of like, I agree more, it's the class thing than it is about the culture, race thing is what we need to be talking about personally. So
I agree. I think that's something all three of us could agree on. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I got,
like you said, like, you understand like why people are saying that, like why they want to have like their own little meetings and everything. I mean, like, there was BET, right? So I mean, I understand like why, like I understood why it was upsetting, why they had to have BET, but then I don't understand why it's the reverse of just like, well, now we want to have BET because we want to, not because we had to, because you wouldn't let us in the Oscars. So I don't understand that, I guess, like, turning around, doing a 180 from that movement. I don't know. Like, certainly everyone join the Oscars. Don't have your own BET or Bollywood. Like, everyone just be at the Oscars, and it's everyone together type of situation. So I don't know why you'd want to separate yourself, because that was the whole fight, and that's one of the arguments, right, for the transgender thing. It's just like, we fought so hard for women's rights, and now we're kind of obliterating what a woman even is ultimately. So it's like these, I don't know, all these like movements are taking a 180 in weird directions. So
I think it's a consequence of we basically fetishized the victimhood, and we've rewarded it. And I think it's bad for actual victims. Like the word on Occidental College, I was thinking about this recently when Eric, you and I had this conversation years ago. They changed the definition of rape to regret the next day, and people are like, well, whatever, it's still inappropriate. Well, sure it is. But when you're hurting people that have actually been through something horrible like that. And I think that we're rewarding victimhood to the points where people are actively seeking that. And I see it. I mean, I saw it down there for sure with younger people. Like when I was at the barbecue joint, I had younger employees that would engage in that sort of thought. You see it everywhere here. But I think that that's just a concept. And the real problem is that there are real victims, and they don't want to speak up because it's my sister. My sister has she's got some mental health issues she's dealing with, and she told me, and she's in the medical field, she's a nurse, and she was telling me that she doesn't like talking about it because she feels like everybody has a mental health issue. I can relate to that a little bit. Everybody talks about what they have, and I think part of that specifically is going up. But we're turning it into like, hey, this is part of my identity. I have X, Y, and Z. You know.
It's like those breakthroughs of like The Sopranos whenever you have him talking to the therapist and that being a big deal at the time because that's just not what people did.
Yeah.
And like Mindhunter talks about that a little bit. There's that moment where the girl, she's just like, you don't have to be the good soldier anymore. You can actually like talk to people and everything. Like there's that movement of just like, oh yeah, like we don't have to just, shut up and take it anymore. So yeah, maybe it's just like it went too far in some weird direction where now it's just like we're oversharing and like, I don't know, not owning certain things. I don't know.
There is a point where it's like, hey, I get it. Like it's good to have a good cry every once in a while, and it's good to, but there is a point where it's like, you just stop being a bitch. I think that all the time. Like just cut the shit. You can't just complain all the time about your problems. Like, it's good to have a little bit of that, but just, you got to stop being a bitch. You got to go to fucking work.
Right, it's the fine line trying to figure all that stuff out and everything. Like that book I was telling you guys I've been reading, like I can't put it down. I think partially because I'm trying to keep myself off my phone, but it actually is really good. It's really kind of explaining a lot how it's from the 70s, so a little dated, of course, but I think there's still a lot of value to it. Where even a chapter now where it's talking about like the influence of like different interest groups and like labor unions and then businesses that they have on politics and the strength of all of those different groups ultimately. And that, as we all could have guessed, like the author's just like, well, obviously business has the biggest influence on politics out of any group, financially and also organizationally ultimately. And that he even says that there's like a certain level of like businessmen are basically like second in line to power. Maybe in some cases more so than the government when it comes down to just because of the sway that they have with stuff, and that government even actually has to like kind of really work and induce business a lot to play their role, because if they don't, the whole country could kind of fall under. So like the whole like too big to fail comes to mind as an example, in the sense of like we have to like plead to them to like give loans out and give them money so that way the whole financial system doesn't fall down. So it puts business people in a weird place where they're kind of in more control than they should be. But it's like the chicken or the egg thing. It's like how does that happen ultimately? Like how much is business this like pseudo government thing that maybe it was that way beforehand? And he's trying to explain too like the progression of time. I think both of you might even like it too, because he really is trying to stay as moderate as possible. Like he'll make a claim but say like, I'm not trying to make this claim to like make it more of a reaction, but to give you an explanation for why this exists. So I don't know.
What book? What year was it written?
Like 76 or something, I think.
That's interesting. I think you can actually like combine the last two conversations. Like I think my opinion on the too big to fail is like that's part of the problem. You have to let that happen. I mean, like you need to. It's good for economies to have recessions from time to time. I think that I don't think we should have. I get why they did it. Like when Obama did that, I totally understand. I totally get it. Like you're going to just fuck up the economy if you don't do that. But I think that at times you need to just take the hit, and it's like, yeah, this is going to hurt, but that's how it works.
Yeah, I guess, it's just like, how does that work? 'Cause I mean, that's why I've had the arguments with you guys before, debates, if you will, just about, like, how much our business is important in the overall, like, stability of things, and therefore, like, the health of people. Because, I mean, I think that, David, you've mentioned several times, like, unemployment or something, like, every percentage it drops, like, there's a certain amount of people that basically die because of that.
Every percentage it goes up, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I guess that's definitely on people's minds. And like I watched that movie Too Big to Fail again recently, and like they let Lehman Brothers go bankrupt and everything. What you guys know about that?
The what?
Lehman Brothers was one of the banks that they actually let go bankrupt, that they didn't help out. But from my understanding, it was after that they realized how much all this was tied together, and that's I guess why they were too big to fail, is because once Lehman Brothers went down, it was like this like domino effect of loss of trust of just the financial community in general. So that's why they had to kind of bail them out, was to kind of show that, hey, your money is safe. There's no need to start pulling all your funds out and not having runs in the bank and stuff like that. I don't really know I'm going with this right now, but...
Well, I know what you mean. I mean, I think we let it get to that point because we let government and business crawl into bed together. And then it got to this point where we're there, which I think, Bryant, that's an area where we'll agree, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like...
So it's like a monster at this point, and nobody knows.
Yeah, it is, yeah. You let it grow, and it got its own... Yeah, it's gone... You're right, it's a monster at this point.
Right, just like in control. So, I mean, that's one of the things they talked about, too, is like what AGI... like how much risk they were taking on ultimately. I guess like the things that they always joke about, I think also in The Big Short they mentioned that too, was everyone just thought that real estate would never go down or something like that. Yeah. So they're like just putting all this money into these risky investments, just thinking that it would always go up and up forever. That just doesn't make sense at all to me. Like why that was a thought, I guess, in the financial system. And like I guess the too big to fail thing, they make the comment of just like everyone's making too much money to care. I guess maybe that's just what greed is, I suppose, where you just lose sight of reality because you're just shoveling so much cash in or something like that. But yeah, I just don't know where that lack of like balance leaves people. Maybe it's like bureaucracy. It's like no one really sees the whole elephant, so they don't realize that they're like, pushing off a cliff or something. I don't know.
It's like being in a new romance. You don't notice the red flags because she's so hot. The sex is so good. That's what it's like when you're that rich, I bet. You're just not even thinking. You're like,
Well, and Lex, he quotes BoJack Horseman, where he says, "When you're wearing rose-colored glasses, all red flags just look like flags."
Yeah. Hey, I've been there. I get it.
But yeah. So I don't know. I'm just trying to, in my own mind, trying to like untangle like this like business politics thing and just like where the two are separate and where they come together. And I guess the argument is that they're basically the same thing to a certain degree. So. I don't know. That's kind of where my mind's been the past couple of weeks, I guess.
I just think it's the world becomes very complicated, and I mean I would assume that you guys agree with this, but like as you get older, you just realize that there's not quick solutions like you're told when you're a kid, and sometimes it's just like there's no solution here. I've been in situations personally like that where you just go like there's not a solution here, you're fucked, I think that we'll kind of get into some of those points.
That's one thing he mentioned in the book too, is like how like spending can go wrong in government is because like there will be things that are impossible tasks that private industry won't take up because they know it's impossible, to be a waste of money because you can't fix a problem. But then government will form an agency because, like, you have to try, right? So they'll throw money at what everyone knows is an impossible problem just to kind of satisfy that moral quandary, I guess, ultimately. Interesting. So,
was it Socrates that said that democracy was stupid because people don't know what's good for them?
There might have been Socrates or Plato,
one of those guys.
But yeah, it was basically he was talking about it's not good because you could essentially get like a demagogue who isn't good at what they do. They're just very popular, and so
Oh yeah. I don't believe in that in practice, but I get the logic behind it. You could see, where he get that idea from. I think you have to give people a certain amount of power, but.
No, I think it was Plato and the Republic, I think, is where that comes from, now that I think about it. But that's
right. That does sound right.
Yeah. Well, my favorite commercials, I think it was like Super Bowl last year, this year or the year before. It was a Larry David. It was like a Bitcoin, I think, ad or something like that. And it's like all these like inventions through history, and like his character is basically like, that's fucking stupid. Like, why would we do that? And so, like, the end is, like, the Bitcoin thing of just, like, that's stupid, why would we do that? It's supposed to be, like, a wink at Bitcoin's a good idea. But
Do you remember which company, which one that was for? Like, is that the one that sued a bunch of people, like a bunch of the spokespeople? Was it FTX or something? Like a bunch of the people got sued that like were in those ads for some of the Bitcoin shit.
Oh no, I think that was the.
I think that is.
FTX. That was who was the guy in Good Will Hunting? Matt Damon. I think that was the one he was in. Whatever that was, I think that was.
But they had several varieties of the commercial from the same company with different with different people's doing stuff.
It could have been. But the middle of the commercial I liked a lot is it's one of the scenes is like he's basically in the room with the founding fathers writing the Constitution, and he like grabs the Constitution and is like, we're gonna let everybody vote, and they're like, yeah. He's like, even the stupid ones. And they're like, yeah. And he's just like, no. He tries to like tear it up, and they throw him out of the room and everything. And there's a certain level, like everyone understands that on an intuition level of just like there's some fucking idiots out there. Certainly not everyone can vote, but there's a certain beauty in the sense it's like, well, we're all fucking idiots, you know. So we have to kind of reconcile somehow and make this work. So.
Because you could be a fucking idiot and rich, and you know that's what all that really matters. Like you just had land and stuff, and you had money. But you still could be a fucking idiot somehow, and you were born into a lot of that money. You still get a vote.
There's a lot of those out there.
Yeah,
yes, there are.
I do think a lot about just like the lives that we're born into, and just like I guess how much of our world is just based off of that moment that we kind of come up into the world. Ultimately, it's such a weird thing. How I mean, I do think that in this country you are given the benefit of like breaking out of these molds, but I think it's hard to even realize you're in them most of the time.
For
it's
sure.
Just like, I'm in a coal mine because my father was, and it seems like an obvious thing of just like, oh, well, you just followed your father, but I think that's your world. You know, you grew up in fucking Ohio or Michigan, and that's just what your world is.
Or south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
And you're in a bad neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's just what exactly. That's what you do.
Yeah, so that's
what your
like
family does.
To get out of those. Yeah.
Right, the idea of just how easy it is to move and like, you know, pick a new life and everything. I just don't think is that like there's Bob Dylan had an interview where he talked a little bit about that, and the interviewer was trying to be like, so you moved to New York from where was he from? Minnesota or Missouri or something like that. He's just like, wasn't it like a big leap for you to take? He's just like, no, everyone was doing that. Like no one wanted to be in my town, so it's almost like this weird thing of like him moving to New York actually wasn't that big of a deal for him. It was just what everyone was doing. So it seemed like part of course, ultimately. You know, obviously he put some due diligence in and made great songs and everything, but you know, making those leaps wasn't big leaps for him. It was small steps, I guess, if you will. So it's a strange thing. My mom talked about in Ohio too. Just people like distance for them is like, you know, no one leaves town. No one drives like from the other side of Cleveland to the other side of Cleveland. Like it's just too far. Like my mom lives in like the west side of Cleveland, a little bit outside of Cleveland, and then she'll go to work at a school in Cleveland, and the kids there are like blown away that she drives 30 minutes to work. It's just like they never leave.
It's different in those smaller places. Just everything's so close together. There's so much you can do. Because when I went to Cleveland this past summer, you know, we didn't have to go far because we could stay in the one place, and we can get to so many different things that were there in the city. We didn't have to leave it to that. We're here like in Texas. It's so fucking big. You like they're so spread out to get to anything, you know.
Right.
So I know a lot of people that commute like an hour each way to work.
Yeah.
Like it's just what it is. It's like fuck.
Yeah.
Now that trips me up. Like an hour. Like I hit like 30 minutes is like my max. If I have to do more than that, I'm just like fuck. This sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do like 40 minutes right now, but luckily I'm doing the hybrid thing, so I don't have to go to work every day. But yeah, it's like 40 minutes with traffic just to get to work. I know like Dave Conway at Cafe way back when, he used to drive like an hour and 15 to work or something.
Yeah, fuck that.
He lived in Denton, I think.
Yeah, it's like I remember we drove to his house one time to just hang out or something like that, and just like, you know, the drive kept going and going. I was like, what are we doing? Like, where are we going? Like, this is insanely far to drive to work and back, you know, 5 days a week. But yeah, it's a bizarre thing, but it just, that mindset of not understanding different things are out there. It's like, you know, my whole silly thing is like trying different like mustards and different like cheeses and stuff, just kind of like branch out and just be like, you know, you don't know what's out there until you try stuff. You know, just trying to like break out of my own little silly molds. But there's just all these little other things I just don't think we realize that are around us, and we're stuck in these things. And I don't know how you like how you awake from it.
The people, it's hard for people to break out of their comfort zone. You know.
Yeah.
You know, they know what they like. They need. They expect what they expect. You know, there's this. What am I looking for? I can't think of it. The frequency or whatever it comes up. How, you know, they're used to the routine. You know, the routine of the thing. They can't get out of it. You know, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but they're just so used to that.
Yeah.
They know what they're going to expect every day. Like, this day's going to do this, or do you grow up and do this with your family? So yeah, you don't know you're in that mold, but you don't leave it because it's so comforting to you, because you know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, changing any habit is really hard, especially like to do something like that. But I think you're just, in some ways, your environment just hardwires you to a certain amount of behavior. And I mean, just changing anything is, I have trouble getting up 5 minutes early. I get up at the same time every day, but getting 5 minutes early, it wouldn't make that. There's something in my mind that's like, no, not today.
Yeah.
Well, I ever think about that scene in Succession whenever it's like Greg is starting to get money and they go out to eat, and he's just like, well...
California Pizza Kitchen.
Yeah, he's just like, they make that pasta or whatever just the way I like it. And then, what's the other guy's name? I forget right now.
Tom.
Yeah, Tom's just like, you're not supposed to like it that way. So I think about that sometimes too.
It's really good.
Right, it's a weird thing, because for him it's just like, that is what's good, that's what I like, and then there's a certain like aristocracy in Tom, of course, it's just like no, that's shit. Like, there's a refinement that you're missing in life ultimately. And it's like, it's some balance between those two things, I think, of just like trying to, you know, see the world somehow, I guess. But I don't know. It's like Nicole wants to move, and I think that's my thing, is like, you know, my comfort is like, this is like my home. My parents moved from Ohio down to here, but for some reason I'm just like, it seems like a crazy step. Huh?
Where's she want to go?
Germany, Japan.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Just dip out and go to another country, huh?
Exactly. I mean, she's worried about the country. I think that we all are, for various reasons, you know. But
I'd be more worried about over there.
It's a dangerous place in general. So I mean, Japan doesn't look too good, being so close to Russia and, you know, North Korea and China.
I don't go to Japan. I definitely, of the two, I would pick Germany. But you know, I have my biases.
right, exactly. So I mean,
I still have plenty of family over there that I can just go, hey, can I crash here until I get settled or get something going?
Which is a good deal, actually. I mean, I would love the idea of going to Germany, but yeah, then I think a lot about like the energy crisis up there, just in Europe in general. So it's just like, you know, what place is really like safe to go. So it's like I'm almost kind of like hunkering down and like, okay, well, I know the land here, and Texas is pretty big, lots of open spaces. But I don't know. I almost think I should just move though, just to fucking do it. You know, look back and be like, I almost didn't. You know.
You only live once.
Yeah.
You know, and enjoy it a little bit. I mean, moving out of the country, that's a huge deal. But hey, man, give us an excuse to fly out there. But I had a conversation with my mom today. Actually, I called her and I talked to her about, you know, how she's feeling about where we're at in this world, and you know, about how all this stuff is on everybody's mind. And I was like, how do you and Curtis feel? I mean, if stuff got crazy, do you guys have a place you'd go? And my stepdad reminds me of you, Eric, and how he's very optimistic. He's just, it's going to work out. I really wish I could adapt that worldview, but I just can't. But I mean, I think it's on a lot of people's mind right now. There's 3 movies coming out in the next few months about World War III or the Civil War or a power outage. I mean, it's on people's minds right now.
Yeah, did you guys see Leave the World Behind yet on Netflix?
I don't have Netflix anymore.
Oh, okay.
I heard about a certain scene in it about not trusting white people anymore. once we get the world back going again or something like that. But I have not seen the movie yet. I know supposedly Barack Obama helped produce it.
Yeah, him and his wife helped produce it. I thought it was actually pretty decent. Like, it was like this like kind of cool thriller of just like you don't really know what's happening. They're stuck at this house. You're trying to understand what's going on. But it's in that vein of what you're talking about right now with like Civil War and everything. So it was very timely and interesting to say the least. But I think it was a good thriller.
It's worth watching.
Yeah, I think it was a good thriller. Yeah, I enjoyed it. So
I'll watch it tonight.
Yeah. But the Civil War movie you were showing me looks interesting as well.
That looks good. That looks really good.
Yeah, it's just like a matter of like how much on the nose is it? Like you want it to be kind of like artistic, not so much just like, oh, that's a Trump guy, that's a Biden guy. Like I want it to be a little artsy more than just like,
I think that's why they have Texas and California together in that. I think they're doing that as balloons. I don't know how I did that.
Right? Yeah, something that was crazy. It's just like
is that a hand gesture?
All of a sudden,
if you finger your phone,
did you randomly hit your phone? Is that you using your phone?
No, I'm a foot away from my phone.
How weird.
I don't know.
Anyways,
crazy. The trailer for the movie, you see a flag with 2 stars, the American flag, but it's just 2 stars, and it says the western fronts of Texas and California. And I think my guess is that that's why they do that, to stay apolitical. But I don't know. I just think that stuff is on people's minds right now. People are it's very tense. It's very tense all over the world. And people are all kind of like, what the fuck's coming down the pike? What's going on?
Yeah.
We'll find out, I guess.